Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Victober, a venerable BookTube event celebrating all Victorian literature in the month of October. I embrace this event wholeheartedly because I love Victorian literature. I just love it. I consider the Victorian era to be the greatest outpouring of human creativity in the species' history, and that's very much represented in the books. The books are just a profusion of interesting, weird, fun, involving stuff. I think it's safe to say that a lot of my favorite books from the whole of the canon are Victorian books. So in these last 10 days, I've been overdoing it on the Victorian stuff, but uh, we've got 20 more days to go for Victober, and that is time for plenty of Victorian authors. So I picked one for you today. Today is Charles Watts Whistler. And Reverend Whistler wrote a lot of historical fiction. And the historical fiction that was done in the Victorian era, it's going to read slightly different to you today than our normal historical fiction does. Most of it was freighted with a higher purpose. Certainly in Reverend Whistler's case, that was true. He wrote mainly about the heroic English defenses of the country against the Vikings. He did book after book like that. And that can make his books just a little repetitive. He had a hit. He was well liked in the Victorian era. People went to bookstores. They went to libraries for his books. He's forgotten now completely, but he did have a mild hit. Havelock the Dane was one of his novels, and it was a minor hit. It was more popular than all of his other books. But all of his books are good. I'm here to report. All of them are good. They're historical fiction very much in the Sir Walter Scott vein rather than in the Wolf Hall vein. They're what you could call musty. Maybe. Just a bit. I don't think so myself. But to the modern reading sensibilities, that might be true. Like, for instance, we have King Olaf's Kinsman, which is about Ethelred the Unready and St. Olaf and Canute the Great. It's got all these name recognition characters. If you know medieval England, it's got all these name recognition characters, and I think they're wonderfully portrayed. The modus operandi here, the sort of theme that now it wasn't just Reverend Whistler, it was a lot of Victorian historical novelists like to embrace the idea of England's finest moments. They loved to do that. As you will know if you've read there was a historical novelist who is part of the subject of Zadie Smith's new novel, who was hugely best-selling in his day. He'll come up on Victober, so I hesitate to spoil the fun now. But in a lot of that historical fiction, there is a kind of teary-eyed celebration of the greatest moments in our past. It's ultimately ironic to me that blue-haired censors in academia in the 21st century routinely ascribed that attitude to Rudyard Kipling, who was pretty much the only successful Victorian writer who not only didn't have that attitude, but openly mocks it in his books. So there's just you can't win for losing. There's just no victory here for an author that everyone has determined to expel from polite society. But a lot of the other authors that could only dream of Kipling's success did write that way. They did write what is basically Whiggish celebratory histories or historical fictions. And Reverend Whistler was one of those. So these are very much, that is the backdrop of all of his books, is that the slender reed of British bravery was tested as never before and proved itself true. That sort of thing. The sort of thing that you could, read by the fireside at night and close the covers and be proud to be British. What are you doing, baby? What are you doing? How's the baby girl? Do you like the Victorians, baby girl? No. Do you? You can't just sit there perched like Edgar Allan Poe's Rave, baby girl. You gotta go somewhere. Do you want to come down? Or do you want to stay up there? Oh, there you go. Oh, little Frida yoga for you. Oh, stretch those glutes. uh, well, where was I? Oh, yes. A great number of his novels feature young male protagonists. They're not all about, King Canute. A lot of them feature young protagonists, very brave protagonists. A lot of them are, I don't want to stretch things too much, but there are great cinematic moments in every book that he wrote. I think they're well worth a rediscovery. That will never happen, but they're all free on Project Gutenberg, so you can go and read to your heart's content. And that is going to be my Victorian discovery for today. If you like historical fiction, especially if you like Viking era historical fiction, you might want to give Reverend Whistler a try. He's actually quite solid, quite good. Certainly, there were historical novelists in the day who were a lot worse. He is a solid, polished storyteller. So he doesn't fly to the great heights of the great historical fiction of the time, but I don't think he sinks far below them either. It's a shame that he's not remembered. So anyway, that is your Victober book for today. Plenty more Victorians to look at, so we'll deal with that as the month wears on. Thank you, BookTube.